Have you ever been in love? I'm not talking about just loving someone. I'm talking about being passionately in love with a person. Perhaps you even resented the fact that you were in love with them. And when you tried to explain why, all you could come up with was, I don't know, they just have it. And that it was my burning question. I wanted to be able to quantify or at least have a better grasp on this X factor that flings us over the tipping point of love to in love. Diving into literature, I stumbled across researchers Aaron and Aaron's self-expansion model. It was pretty simple. It operates under the assumption that all humans have a basic desire to expand the self, be that through physical influence and gaining power, or increasing knowledge and insight, exploration, going to the moon, and so on. By expanding ourselves, we are better able to reach our goals or increase our self-efficacy. Now, how does all of this relate back to love? Well, Aaron and Aaron would say that one common and successful way that we expand the self is by engaging in close relationships. See, when we get close to someone, we tend to overlap our sense of self with theirs, taking on and using to our advantage their perceptions, identities, and resources. And when we experience a rapid onset of this self-expansion, that is falling in love. So it may seem like I'm about to tell you that opposites attract, because after all, who could offer more expansion than someone who is different from you? However, there's a catch. Attraction isn't simply just desirability, it's also heavily influenced by probability. Over and over again in literature, I was seeing the same trend, that similarity was by far the winner and similars attract. The self-expansion model would poise that it is because of probability that this is true. See, many times general relationship formation stems from finding common ground with another. It correlates with less conflict and gives you more to connect with. So recap. Similarity is linked with the probability of relationship formation, and since any relationship is going to offer more expansion than no relationship, it tends to win out. And I wasn't happy with this discordant nature of attraction. I didn't want to reduce passionate love to how shallow the probability factor felt. So I still was left wanting for what that X factor was. I decided to put my own spin on this research and asked volunteers to fill out an online survey in which they indicated how characteristic traits were of themselves and their significant other, along with another battery of scales meant to measure overall relationship satisfaction, which included the self-expansion questionnaire, the inclusion of others in self scale, and the passionate love scale, aptly named to quantify feelings of passionate love between the participant and their partner. I decided to work under the assumption that higher levels of passionate love indicated a higher probability of being in love. The characteristic traits that I asked participants to rate had 3 sections. One that was meant to measure themselves as they actually are, one where they were asked to rate themselves as they desire to be, which I called their idealized self, and a final section where they rated their partners. So what if we were looking at this all the wrong way? It wasn't necessarily about how different or similar you and your partner actually are, but instead important that your partner is similar to your idealized self. In other words, your partner is more similar to the direction in which you wish to expand. So I wanted to know the relationship between how these participants perceived their idealized self and their partner, hypothesizing that the more similar these two groups were, the higher the levels of relationship satisfaction that would be seen. So for example, let's say Jane scored the character trait quiet for her idealized self at 3, and she scored her partner John at a 4. What I did is take the absolute difference of these values, doing the same for each individual trait. And after this, the values were summed together to create a similarity score. The lower the score being the more similar the idealized self and the significant other were. And I did the same thing for the actual self scores compared to the significant other. And the results were interesting. Data analysis did show a significant relationship between scores on the passionate love scale and similarity of the idealized self and other. Interestingly, we did not see the same significant relationship between scores on the passionate love scale and similarity of the actual self and other. So a similarity increased between you and your partner and between your partner and who you want to be. So did passionate love. However, the other indicators of relationship satisfaction, for example, the self-expansion questionnaire, showed no significant correlation to the similarity score between idealized self and other. Now, I think this may have been due to a small sample size. There were only 23 participants in total. However, the data still showed that it was trending in the right direction, but the strength was nowhere near as significant compared to what we saw with the passionate love's relationship to idealized versus other. In the future, I would hope to have a more representative sample, larger and more equal between gender, since this time around we had a majority of females. I would also like to test for different measures of similarity. After all, a person is not just defined by their trait characteristics. If we expand by including someone's perceptions, identities, and resources into our view of self, there is much more ground to cover in future studies. So what does all of this mean? Well, perhaps Aaron and Aaron were onto something. We as humans want to expand, and maybe we can best do that with someone who we see as having qualities that we admire and even aspire to be more like. So next time you go on a date, maybe don't have a list of attributes that your perfect guy or girl should have. Look inward first and decide who you want to be. And maybe, just maybe, this could guide you to finding the one who has it.